I want to start with some feedback I got for last week's class. We spoke about that often being happy and principled don't work in the same sentence. Why? Because we're so principled that it makes us rigid. And rigidity doesn't work in relationships, and therefore it doesn't lead to happiness. So what are you saying, Rabbi? Are you saying that we just walk away? Are you saying that we just give in? Are you saying that principles don't matter? So in order to explore that, I want to start off with a Midrashic tale. Obviously, it's not a literal tale. There's nothing literal about it. The Midrash tells us that when Hashem was creating the world, Hashem reached out to various attributes and asked them their opinion. One of the attributes he reaches out to is the attribute of truth, justice. And he says, should I create the world? To which he says, Al Yibana, don't build it. Why? Because you're creating a world that truth will be very complex, and most people will not live a life of pure truth. So it says Hashem through the emes, he threw the truth, he threw that attribute to the floor, and he asked Chesed, what do you want? What do you think? Kindness, what do you think? Chesed Amar Yibana. Chesed says you should build, and he built it. What's the message over here? Obviously, it's not a literal story. Ultimately, God didn't create a world of robots. He created a world of people. And yes, truth is fundamental and important. He didn't say truth will disappear. He just threw it down. In other words, it plays second fiddle. It plays second fiddle to what? To compassion. To compassion. You see, let's talk about rigidity. Rigid people. You might know them. You might be them. You might think that you know people, and people who know you say that you're the one, whichever. What's rigidity? Rigidity is, I know what's right. I'm talking about good rigidity. I'm not talking about just impossible rigidity on stupid things. I know I'm right. There's the principle of the matter. And if I compromise it, then I am making my world a little less justice. But the question is, in life, is it our job to be a judge? Or is it our job to be a compassion? There is room for justice in this world, in the court of law. There's room for rigidity in certain scenarios. But on the most part, the single most important feeling a person can navigate this world with is the feeling of compassion. Rachamim. Kindness. Not kindness, compassion, sorry. Let me explain what I just said. Not kindness, compassion. According to Kabbalah, according to Jewish mysticism, there are three pillars of the world that the world stands on. The world stands on kindness, discipline, compassion. Chesed on the right, Gevura on the left, Tiferet in the middle. Chesed on the right, what does it mean on the right? Anything that's on the right of the pillar, because there's many other attributes within the right. There's creativity, there is courage, they're all on the right. The right are things that are refer to emotions that are expansive. They refer to emotions which are, expanding oneself, bigger than oneself, going beyond oneself. That is the right. The left is constricting. Gvura, strength. Strength as in the strength, discipline strength. Humility. More analytical, not as expansive as the creative. This is more analytical. In other words, this is a more closed-in energy. The right is more expansive energy. The left vestige, the left pillar of the universe, is more constricting energy. Now, expansiveness is not bad or good, and constrictedness is not bad or good. It depends on the context. But they are both extremes. They are both extremes. They are right or left. Then there is the middle vestige. The middle vestige is Tiferet, which is the combination of two. Another thing that's in the middle, another one of the Sfirot, is Yesod, relationships, connections. Why? Because Yesod, relationships, can only happen in the middle. What's the middle? The middle is the balance of the two. What's the balance of right and left? Compassion. Why is compassion the balance? I hope you're holding with me. Right, kindness, expansiveness. The left, rigidity, constrictedness. And the middle is compassion. Why? What does compassion do? Compassion comes and says, I see you, and maybe I see you're deserving of constrictedness. Maybe you're deserving of expansiveness, whichever. But ultimately, I am not giving you what I want to give you. I'm giving you what you need. You see, both the right and the left, what they have in common is they are the givers. The giver gives what they want. In other words, the giver is saying, I'm in a giving mode, I'm in a constricting mode, but it's all about the giver. The middle one is all about the receiver. It's all about, what do you need? How can I connect to you? What's your scenario? So I'm not asking what I want to give, I'm asking what you need. And I'm not asking what you deserve, I'm asking what can help you. Do you see what Rachamim does? Do you see what compassion does? What compassion does is it allows you to stop saying, I am a rigid, I am a free spirit. It's not about you. It's about the makabel, it's about the receiver. What does the receiver need? What can I give this person who's coming to receive from me? So Tiferet, which literally means beauty, is, the sages tell us, is the characteristic of rachamim, of compassion, because compassion is what channels both the right and the left in the healthiest way. And that's why relationships are in the middle. Yesod is the level of relationship. Why? Because relationships can only happen in a place of integration, where I bring a lot of love and generosity and right wing, in other words, not right wing politically, but right wing Kabbalistically, expansive energy, left wing, more constricted energy. Both are important. If you're just limitless, then you have no life. If you're just limited, then you really have no life. You need structure and you need the ability to break beyond the structure. But the ability to truly engage with that is through an eyes of compassion. Compassion on the other and compassion on yourself. Now, that was a very convoluted Kabbalistic answer to answer what? When you have somebody in your life that you are struggling to get along with, because principally, if you get along with them, you're going to be compromising on your principles. You're asking only about you. It's a relationship that's only being centered in the left, in the Kabbalistic left side. In other words, you're asking yourself a simple question: how does it make me feel? What do I feel they deserve? But the moment you can channel yourself into a compassion, what compassion does, it allows you to ask a simple question: do I know them? Do I understand them? Do I understand the context of what they're going through? Can I be bigger than the principle? The ultimate example of this in history is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was, at first glance, Mr. Principled. The Torah, which is a book of principles, is called the Torah of Moshe. And yet, Moshe would be willing to do anything to save his people out of compassion. And I'll give you the perfect example. I'm recording this in the Parsha of Tetzaveh, right? This Shabbos is the Parsha of Tetzaveh. It was also the week of Moshe Rabbeinu's Yartzeit. Moshe Rabbeinu's Yartzeit was on the 7th of Adar a few days ago. So, from when Moshe enters the scene, a few parshiyot ago, till the end of the Torah, it always refers to Moshe. Moshe's name is mentioned. The only time it isn't is in this week's parsha, in Tetzaveh. The question is why, and the answer is because there's many answers, but the basic answer is this is the week that Moshe died. And because Moshe died in this week, we wanted to give him something greater than having his name. What are we giving that's greater than having his name? Not taking his name. Why? Because in next week's Torah portion, we're going to read about the sin of the golden calf. 40 days after the Jewish people were told, thou shalt not serve an idol, they served an idol. Moshe is in heaven when it happens. He's coming down the mountain and he sees the chaos of the idolatry taking place in the bottom of the mountain after spending 40 days with God. He breaks the tablets. Why does he break the tablets? Because the tablet says, thou shalt have no other God. But he had never delivered the tablets to the Jewish people, so they never really received the contract. So if he breaks the contract before it arrives to the Jewish people, he saves them. He did not break it out of anger. He broke it out of compassion. More so, then he goes back and he starts arguing with Hashem. And he says, Ve'im ayin, if you do not forgive the Jewish people, mechenina, erase me, misifrecha asher kasafta, from the book that you wrote. In other words, this Torah, erase me. I don't want to be part of a Torah that can allow and enable the destruction of the entire people. I don't need it. So in this week's Torah portion, his name's not there. Why? Because it pays testament to that moment, which Moshe achieved the greatest moment of his life when he was willing to pick the Jew over the Torah. He was willing to have compassion to the sinner rather than the rigidity of the law. Did Moshe not know it's wrong to serve idolatry? Of course he did. But he wasn't a judge and jury. He was a friend. He was a leader. He was Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our Rebbe, our teacher. And he saw in these people their humanity. And therefore, on the week of his Yartzeit, because his Yartzeit always falls on the Parsha of Tetzaveh, very often it does, we take his name out to commemorate that time that he asked Hashem, take me out. I don't want to be part of the Torah. So his name is not there. To celebrate the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu understood something, that compassion is greater than any other attribute. You know, often when we use the word compassion in Hebrew, we use it wrong. We say, oh, he's such a rachmanis. Rachmanis. Rachamim is not, it's not a patronizing, it's not condescending, it's not sympathy, it's empathy. Rachamim. Think about it. Each morning in davening, just before the Shema, we say, Avinu av harachaman, our dear Father, compassionate Father, hamarachem, the compassionate one. So av harachaman, the compassionate Father, hamarachem, who has compassion, rachem aleinu, please give us compassion. That's a lot of rachamim, like Avinu av harachaman, hamarachem, rachem aleinu. Why? Because Hashem, the only way we could truly have a relationship with you is if you have Rahmanas in us, if you see us for our entire humanity, if you see us not just in a narrow way, but you see our complexity. When you see our entire humanity. Rigidity comes from our inability of seeing the complete human being and the ability to thus say, how can I be so principled when I'm dealing with somebody who's so beautiful and complicated and messy? How can I judge them so harshly if I'm not standing in their shoes? How can I judge them so harshly if I haven't been in that test before? How can I judge them so harshly if I don't have their personality type? Rigidity comes when we think we're living in a world of robots, where we think that we're living in a world which is one big courtroom. The world is not a courtroom. The courtroom's in heaven. Hashem is the true judge. Why is Hashem the true judge, and why do we get judged when we die? Because only Hashem knows every single detail. Ha'adam yira le'einayim, the human being can only see what they could see, says the great prophet Shmuel. V'Hashem yira le'levav, and God sees the heart. God sees what's really going on. God sees the big picture. God sees the complexity. God sees the entire me. And therefore, tzedek, righteous, justice is up there. Din, justice is up there. Why? Because only God can truly judge us. Because he can separate the wheat from all the junk, the kernel from all the stuff around it. But by us, for us to be able to look at one another and even to be able to look at ourselves and to see that clearly is impossible. And therefore, only compassion can truly work. Only compassion can work when we look at ourselves, when we could look at ourselves and say, gosh, I've made a mistake, but gosh, I struggle, I fail, I make mistakes. It's not okay, but I could do better, but I'm okay with not being okay. I'm okay with the fact that I'm human. I'm not going to beat myself up on every sin I do, because I'm not a robot and I'm not living in a courtroom. I'm living in life. Now think about it. What is relationships if not one big classroom on compassion? When two people date, often they think they're dating perfection. So therefore they think that the rest of life will be a courtroom because what do you mean? It's perfect people. But as you get to know a person, you realize their complexity, how beautiful they are and how messed up they are, and their good attributes and their weak attributes, and what the stuff that makes you kvel and nachas, and the stuff that makes you cringe. And you start seeing their entire humanity, and that is the classroom. That is where life comes and says, okay, can you develop compassion for that human being, the full makeup of the human being, not the human being you thought you married, but the human being who they truly are. Having children is the same thing. We bring a child into this world. Yes, we think they're perfect, and slowly but surely we discover how imperfect they are. Why? Because they were created, and then they were created by God, who creates imperfect beings. That's the point. We're not angels, we're human beings. And then we learn how to have compassion for them. Compassion for their struggle, compassion for what they go through. It's the only way to navigate this world. It's the only way to be able to forgive yourself and others. It's the only way you won't get so defensive by their hurt. Sometimes, yes, we have to cut people out of our lives if they're hurting us. But in other times, we can teach ourselves not to be hurt by them. I'm not talking about real abuse, physical abuse, etc. No, you don't have to teach yourself anything. I'm saying you have a toxic relationship with a parent. So option A, cut them out. That's toxic. Option B, develop compassion. And therefore you won't allow their toxicity to enter you, because you're going to drown the toxicity with compassion. You're going to take that acid and you're going to send love on that acid. and allow the acid to dissipate. It might change them, it might not change them, but it won't affect you, because the moment they release their acidity, you release your love that comes from compassion, your empathy, understanding that their circumstance, their personality, who they are, formed them in some way, and you're not here to be the judge and the jury. You're not here to say if they're right or wrong, but you're here to say, I want to love them. I want to be one with them. I want to truly connect to them. If we allow ourselves to look at the world through eyes of compassion, then there is almost no relationship in our life that will feel the need to amputate. The only reason we amputate relationships is because we allow the toxicity to enter, because we don't have a good defense mechanism. So we say, oh my gosh, that person overwhelms me, that person is impossible, and I don't know how to deal with it. But if I could develop a defense mechanism of saying, I feel bad for the pain you're in, I feel so sorry, but I still appreciate the goodness inside of you. I appreciate the fact that you're my sibling, you're my parent, you're my child. You're a person that means the world to me, and I want to have some form of relationship. We can then melt the toxicity that sits at the heart of so many relationships. Avinu of Harachaman, our compassionate Father, Hamarachim, who has compassion. Rachim. Have Rachmanis. See us in a way of compassion and allow us to see others in that way as well. Teach us to be bigger than rigidity. Teach us to not get locked into the right or the left, but rather to always work to the middle. Teach us to be Moshe Rabbeinu, who loves principles, but loves people even more. Teach us to aim for the stars, but to never judge those who cannot rise out of the dust. Teach us to grow, but not out of a place of proving to ourselves, but rather a place of compassion to ourselves. Teach us to forgive ourselves for our mistakes. Teach us to forgive others for theirs. And help us heal our own inner world.